Up next on Inspiring Beauty and Believers.
One of the things that really comes up for me in that and not asking for help or knowing how to is because showing emotion for men, for lack of a better word, has been weaponized against them on so many occasions that it's sometimes not even worth showing emotion.
Back again, he's done. Back again, he's done miracles. Back again, he's done miracles on me. Back again.
So, Marcus, you nodding your head a lot. What's I need to drink some water. You're nodding your head a lot. So, have you experienced or dealt with any, any of these type of feelings? I know you don't have any children or been through divorce or anything like that, but
No, even to this point, like I can't pick a time in my life that I recognized there was depression. We obviously are always going to face difficulty. But something that you said earlier really resonated with me heavily. And it was just around outlet. And I'm not sure if it was you or Doc that made the reference about outlet and speaking about issues and for men, especially Black men as a whole. One of the things that really comes up for me in that and not asking for help or knowing how to is because showing emotion for men, for lack of a better word, has been weaponized against them on so many occasions that it's sometimes not even worth showing emotion. And so then the knee-jerk reaction to bottling it up, suppressing it as much as you can, and just moving forward, even if it comes down to the space of, medicating in different ways, whether it be alcohol, drugs, whatever that is for you, or other avenues like sexual attraction or fornication, whatever you want to call it, like pursuit or gambling, and all of these outlets are a beautiful distraction because you'd rather embody your emotion or bottle up your emotion than express it to the wrong people that then will weaponize it. And that's men and women. So when Jay's like, yo, I didn't know who to talk to in that state, it's because generations that came before us don't know how to do it. And so they can't really help you do it. So they just tell you to suck it up. And then our generation, I'll tell from my own experience, I think our generation is so ass backwards that we have women that are like, please show us your emotion. Then you show emotion and then they throw that shit in your face. Then you got
you're doing the most. You're doing the most. No, that's what women do.
Yeah, like wholeheartedly. As soon as you said it, I was like, damn, why that's 100% accurate, right? Like, and then you to your boys, if they're not like men that are in alignment with where you're going or who you're becoming, they'd be like, yo, stop being a bit. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, yo, suck that shit up. Like, don't talk to me about that shit, even though, it's like an obvious area of opportunity to talk about and talk through. So it's just been crazy to see. And then, for people that are dealing with depression, I've been honored to have good men in my life like these two who are on the call. And when those seasons come up, it's not like, yo, try to provide an answer, but it'd be like, yo, hold space for your people that are going through something that they have enough trust in their heart that they can even say it, because we don't even find that every day. People that you can just say you're struggling to. And so it's cool to see that it's starting to become a healthy conversation.
I think that's a good segue into asking, like, how do you think, or how would you like, either way, people to show up for you, whether you are depressed or in a depressed state, or just in a season of I was gonna cuss, a season that is just maybe not where you want it to be, and it's not, the roller coaster up, it's the roller coaster down. But how can you? Shannon's laughing at me.
I think that's a really good question. Because I'll tell you guys, for myself, this last week or so, it's been really on my heart to figure out how to learn how to ask for help. Because it seems like it's so simple, but it's really hard. Like when you're confronted with it, because even in the position that I'm in right now after tearing my Achilles, I was talking to one of my mentors, and she was like, what do you do when when life is uncomfortable or you're in a state of discomfort? And I was like, well, I handle it. And she's like, what does that look like for you? I was like, I basically retreat into myself, like back in the cave, I isolate and I figure it out. That's the only option. She's like, well, what about when you need help? I was like, what about it? She's like, you ever ask for help? And I had to be honest. I was like, I don't even know how. Like, it's, to me, philosophically and conceptually, it seems like it would be so easy to be like, hey, I need help. But when you actually need help, it's actually not easy to be like, hey, bro, like I just need help.
I think that is so on point, especially with the whole group of us, and I'm sure a lot of the audience, but I know these people, personally, and they tend to know me. I don't generally ask for help because I just handle stuff for myself. And I've learned that because I've learned to rely on myself, because when I would ask for help, usually it wouldn't turn out the way that I thought it was going to be, or I would be used, or different things that would happen, or to be thrown back in my face. So I learned how to take care of it myself. So now that I'm in a different space in my life with, on this healing journey and having other people who I know that I can rely on and trust, learning to be like, okay, they're not going to stab me in the back. They're not going to throw it in my face if I ask for help. Like, it's still a stretch. Like, I got to call this person and talk to them and share stuff and open my heart. It's hard. And as a female, it's hard. I can't imagine what it's like for a guy, because we're used to talking to each other and talking through our stuff, even if we don't want to ask each other for help. And she's stubborn. So I have to show up and make her accept my help. So yeah.
It wasn't about me though.
Whatever. Because you are. So.
It's such a real conversation, because if you look at it, and this isn't to play the victim, because I believe that we are definitely God's chosen people for a reason, right? And this is why the world works so hard to disrespect us as Black, beautiful kings and queens on this earth. But with that being said, is we've been put into so many different scenarios where individually Black women overlooked, underappreciated, disrespected, and yet have mothered every single region to life, right? Like in the foundation that took care of every race, color, and creed has been mothered by the Black woman. Not just created from her, as she has the Eve gene for a reason, right? But and still she's looked down upon. And so now you look at Black women disrespecting Black women feeling disrespected by Black men, Black women disrespected by society, and Black men the same fight. And it's like, yo, it's just, there's so many levels to it. It goes, well, who the hell do I ask for help? Like, who? And I know personally, even as a man, if I find them, there have been a few times, I can almost count on one hand, the few times I've asked for help and from people that I trust. And when they've helped me, I'm like, yo, I got to rectify this immediately. Because I also know that I've had friends that have been taken advantage of in their help. And I'm like, yo, I don't want them to feel not that I don't want to feel like I owe someone something. I just don't want them to feel that they're possibly in a position they were in before when someone took advantage of them. Because even if you are a helper and you're like, yo, I'm gonna help this person out, and then they burn that bridge, you be like, man, I don't feel like helping nobody no more. And so then I'll be like, man, I can't ask for help because my people's got, man, I've seen my mans get asked, effed over, you know what I'm saying? So then when you do ask for help, be like, yo, I got to fix this as soon as possible because I just don't want my people to be in that position. It's this wild dynamic. And again, of course, these are stories that we're telling ourselves, but they're based on real life experiences as well. King, I know you're about to say something, bro.
I was.
When you came off mute, I was like,
Nah, I came off mute because I was about to say something, but I had lost it in the process of going over that. But one of the things that I've definitely learned in going through the time, because you was talking about definitely about being suppressed and things of that nature, or being independent, is that the fact of I have to understand, and this is something that I learned within inside of myself, is that just from growth and learning, is that going through a part of like, damn, giving somebody money or doing something for them, is it worth losing the relationship? Because if it does fall out, because a lot of times what I've learned, it's not always you. Sometimes a person who didn't pay you back get ashamed and then they leave, and then you lose that relationship. So sometimes you start getting into that point. And we do have people who misuse you as a person. And you also find out people who are manipulative, you know what I'm saying, that are trying to use it as a come up. And it's just the way that it is. But some of the things that I've learned in it is that just because that person has burnt that bridge doesn't mean the next person will. And that's one of the things with real growth and maturity, because you said like those stories you tell yourself, you start learning through time is that every person's different and you got to treat them as different and as such. Because I mean, some of the worst things to do is lose, you know what I'm saying, a long time friend or family member over something as small as money. And one of the things that one of my uncles who raised me and actually, you know, took me under and actually raised me for years and has been there for me, he said, money comes and goes, but family never does. You know what I'm saying? It's like, so in other words, that sometimes people get so caught up on money is that is the point. It's like you can never get over the situation. Even if this person got you out of, you know, $15 or $1,500, it really doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, you just doesn't have to loan them no more. If you could still mend the relationship. And that's where, in that aspect for me, when I think about being independent, it's very hard for me to accept from somebody else because I don't want to feel obligated to somebody else. And that was one of the things that in that aspect of being on one end of giving and then on the other end of receiving, because it's nothing worse to lose your job as a man or not have something and then have to ask another man or another person for money to provide for your family when you should be doing that yourself. Now I'm talking for the men who really do it. I'm not talking about the watered downs. That's my nice way of saying it. The watered downs who's just trying to ride the wave and live off another woman. You know what I'm saying? I'm talking about the real men who was raised right, that you at least gonna bring yourself to the table. You don't have to make more than her, but at least bring yours to the table and not try to sit up and maximize off that person. So that's one of the things that I thought about too, is that how money is very connected to being depressed for somebody who's been so used to having it or doing stuff and being independent. And when you don't have it, it's like, man, you feel down as a person. I've seen a lot of independent men go through some spirals in life. And even I've seen some moments, some things that I've read and watched where men take their life because they're so down on not having this thing, you know, this monetary thing.
All right. So we kind of talked about grief and we've kind of talked about illness just a little bit, right? But how do you think, because I can speak on it as a clinician and as a woman, but not as a man. How do you think grief and or major medical conditions can lead to depression, and or have you noticed a shift in your mood, how you think, how you feel, how you operate after that situation? If you don't even want to label it depression or think it's depression, like how have you been able to recognize the difference within yourself? If you have been able to, or has someone called it out for you? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Look, it was a long question.
But Jay's looking at me
all their faces like that was a lot.
That makes sense.
Okay.
Okay. First and foremost, I would say that I don't like, even though we were not able to get the first recording, it wasn't until we did the first recording of this that didn't go through that I was actually processing that I did have depression. So a lot of times you don't know. All you just know is that it's like, dang, I'm really down. I don't want to be bothered. I don't want to eat. I don't want to go through something. Like, it's just a severe sadness of, you know, no purpose in life is the way that I look at it as. Because once again, like I said, you're so used to suppressing and figuring it out as a man. Like one of the things that Marcus, you know, Shannon and talked about is the fact of is for a moment, you typically go into the run and hide, regroup type stage. That's typically for me. When I fall off, and nobody sees me, I usually come back and they're like, bam, Like, dang, what he been up to? Been grinding my butt off in the back behind the scenes, trying to figure it out because I was sitting there hanging from a string and I didn't know how to ask anybody for help. You know what I'm saying? I just went and worked my way through, shaved down, and managed everything and trying to figure it out. But I can't never tell you when, I go through something and I go from grief to depression. Because I know just most recently next to my son, Ray John, would be my grandmother, what we just lost recently. And I know I hit a stage, I cried, but I was able to still conduct the service and do things and be there for family and all that. But then it was a moment after she finally passed, I just was like, I'm off. I'm offline. Don't talk to me until 2022. I took the whole 2020, 21 off. I'm like, wow, I'm not talking to nobody. I'm not doing that. I'm gonna take this time for myself for this moment to regroup, and I'll be back for y'all. Y'all gonna be okay. Just nobody die in 2021 except her, and then I'll be back in 2022. And it really just did. Once again, like I said, you go back, you figure it out, you process what happened to you, and then you're good. But I really just minimized everything I did. But I can't tell you that it was depressed because I never felt down like I was when Ray John passed. So this was very hard. You know what I'm saying? I was?
You said you were depressed.
Oh, okay. Well, good. Look, see, that's what
real good. I was glad somebody knows.
Doctor's your best friend, and she come to the house and visit you and check on you. She's like, yeah, you was depressed. Nah, but it was definitely hard.
That will give you free counseling.
Yes.
Hold on. That's
nobody that shit. Hold on.
I just showed up, made sure he was alive. Okay. He was cool, cracked some jokes, and dipped out. That was.
An evaluation. I wasn't laying on the couch. But one of the things, like I said, though, I did fall back, but I couldn't tell because I still was there for my children. I just minimized how much my capacity I could do. I didn't do anybody outside of my children and immediate few people that I let in, you know what I'm saying? A girl and stuff like that. That was just about it. I just minimized who I would let in that moment. And then once I was good again, I opened it back up to everybody else who wanted it. But good to know. See, I'm fine. I learned something new. I was going through something last year.
See, that's the interesting part.
She mentioned that when you was getting all the tattoos too.
Oh, all I know is that it felt good, but it hurt, and I don't know.
Yeah, we won't go there, but yes. Anybody else?
Isn't the point of this to go there?
Well, yes, but I didn't want to bring up how he healed with his grief and coping. So I was trying to move on to how everybody else recognizes when they were depressed or in a certain
to be perfectly honest, outside of this recent injury, tearing my Achilles, I don't even know that I was depressed, but I wouldn't know it. Like Jay just said, I wouldn't know it. Somebody would have to be on the outside looking in, but I wasn't in a space where I closed off to the world. I didn't want to see the light of day. I tried to sleep all the time. I lost my appetite. None of those things happened for me. Now, mentally, was it a struggle? But I also attribute it to not being able to get up and get out and go do things. That was more of the mental struggle of not having the physical capacity to go do it, as opposed to being I don't want to go do it because I'm hurt. There were times where Shannon hit me up. He was like, yo, you trying to get out the house? I got out hurt. I was like, yes, nigga, yes, yes, you know what? Yes, crutches and a hobble. Let's go. So I wouldn't know if somebody down the road could be like, hey, when you were in that space, because that was the first time where I was confronted with, hey, how are you doing? And I didn't say I was good. I was like, I'm not good. I'm not bad. I'm just kind of off. I'm just off and I'm tired, but tired of not being able to do the things that I know I'm capable of doing. So from a clinical perspective, somebody could be like, yeah, that was mild depression. I'm like, well, shit, I wouldn't have known. Nigga, I was so, just ready.
But if I'm honest, that's kind of how it starts, right? That off space. And then how long do we stay in that off space, right? And if we're trying to fight it, which we're all guilty of it, right? We're trying to fight that off space. Sometimes if we don't sit in it and just deal with it, it just builds until you get to the other space. And now you've already been so far into it that you don't know you're into it. And now it's hard to kind of recognize it. And we can't, men especially, because there are not conversations around it necessarily in their circles. It's not if there's people previously in your lives that have had it, they're not like straightforward, like, oh yeah, I was depressed when so-and-so and so-and-so, right? So it's harder to recognize what that looks like. And a lot of men tend to retreat and isolate, which is then it gets worse. So if we're not able to like call it out or recognize it, which is why I asked that question, it's kind of hard to then stop it from progressing to where maybe Shannon was at, or other people that have completed suicide.
It feels like for me, whenever you're sad, it could be like, yo, that could be depression. You'd be like, yo, I'm sad. Like, I'm sad. I'm mildly depressed whenever I'm sad. Like, it just seems interchangeable because I've never, like I said, like if I was depressed, somebody would have to have told me based on my experience. Because when I was in it, I was like, yo, I'm just sad that I got hurt. Like, physically I'm hurting, and mentally I'm not capable of doing the things that I want to do. Someone would be like, yeah, that's depression. I'm like, or I was just sad, and I don't want to fight depression. I'm not afraid if somebody would like, hey, you were a little depressed. I'd be like, damn, word, like that shit just caught me off guard.
Subscribe so you don't miss next week's video.
You need sadness. Can't be just joy and happiness all the time, because you won't know what joy and happiness is if you've never been sad, right? But depression is when it interferes with your everyday. And so, your strong friend shows up and yeah, they're still going to work, but are they interacting at work, or are they just absent-mindedly going through the motions of work, right? Are you coming home and